I always thought family was supposed to be a source of warmth, a place where you were valued for who you are, not what you give. But looking back, I realize I was never the daughter. They just saw me as the ATM in the living room. My name is Emily. I'm 29 years old, a full-time middle school teacher living in Portland, Oregon. I love my students, even on the tough days, and I've worked hard to build a stable life. I earn $48,000 a year. Modest, sure, but honest, and mine. I still lived at home with my mom and my younger sister, Jenna. Jenna was 24, beautiful in that effortless, Instagram-filtered kind of way. She didn't work, didn't study, didn't really do anything besides scroll TikTok, order clothes online, and complain about how tired she was from existing in late-stage capitalism. My mom, naturally, adored her. I didn't expect applause for paying rent, buying groceries, or covering utilities. But I never expected that my responsibility would become ammunition against me either. That evening started like any other. I got home around 6:15, tossed my bag on the couch, and reheated some leftover soup from the night before. My mom and Jenna were sitting at the dining table. Jenna was filing her nails. My mom was sipping wine from the glass I'd washed that morning. "Emily," my mom said, her tone too neutral. That was the first red flag. She only used my name like that when something was coming. I turned. "Yeah?" She set the glass down slowly, folding her hands on the table. Jenna didn't even look up. "We've been thinking," my mom started, "and we've decided it's time for you to give half of your salary to Jenna." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" "You make enough," she said. "And Jenna's still figuring things out. She needs support from her sister." Jenna finally looked up, wearing a smug little smile. "It's not that big of a deal, Em. I mean, you already pay for so much." "That's exactly the point," I said slowly, heartbeat thudding in my ears. "I already pay for rent, groceries, the power bill, the internet, basically everything. How is giving you half my paycheck on top of that even remotely fair?" Mom narrowed her eyes. "Because Jenna deserves a chance to live too. You act like you're the only one who matters in this house." "I've never said that," I said, trying to stay calm. "But I'm the only one working. The only one paying for everything." "Exactly," Jenna said, standing and stretching like this conversation was just an annoying yoga class. "And if you're already doing all that, what's the big deal with giving a little more?" It wasn't the money that hit me. It was the arrogance, the entitlement, the expectation that I would just keep giving until there was nothing left of me but a shell in teacher's slacks. I tried again. "Mom, Jenna, I make $48,000 a year. After taxes, I bring home maybe 38. You're asking me to give $19,000 away to someone who refuses to work. How is that okay?" Mom's lips thinned. "You're being dramatic." That was always her favorite phrase when I stood up for myself. Not thoughtful, not responsible. Dramatic. I pushed back my chair. "I won't do it." Jenna scoffed. "So selfish. You've always acted like you're better than me." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I've just always shown up. And I'm tired of being punished for it." The air went cold. Mom's voice dropped. "If you can't support this family, maybe you shouldn't live here anymore." There it was. The threat, sharpened and thrown like a dagger across the table. Jenna's smile widened just a little, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't about helping Jenna. It was about replacing me, making sure I was no longer needed, or worse, never wanted in the first place. I didn't say another word. I got up, walked to my room, and sat down on the edge of my bed. My hands trembled as I stared at the wall. 29 years old, a college graduate, a teacher, a provider, and I was still, in their eyes, just a walking paycheck. They didn't love me, they used me, and now that I was saying no, they were cutting me out. I grabbed my overnight bag, filled it with the essentials: wallet, charger, work clothes, a notebook. I left the rest behind. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just walked out. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, cool Portland air hit my skin, and a strange feeling bloomed in my chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't regret. It was freedom. They thought they were punishing me. What they didn't realize was they'd just set me free, and they had no idea what was coming next. The first night I stayed at my friend Morgan's apartment, I barely slept. Her couch was stiff, and the streetlight outside pulsed directly into my eyes, but it wasn't the light or the discomfort that kept me awake. It was the question that looped over and over in my mind. How did it get this bad? I wasn't perfect. I never claimed to be. But I thought I'd done everything a daughter was supposed to do. I worked hard, paid my share, and more, and never asked for thanks. I just assumed love would be returned in quiet ways. I was wrong. I met Morgan back in college at Oregon State. We weren't best friends, but we'd kept in touch through group chats and coffee catch-ups. When I texted her that I needed a place for a few days, she didn't hesitate. "You're always welcome," she said. That tiny act of kindness felt enormous compared to what I'd just walked away from. The next morning, I went through the motions. I showered, put on my work clothes, and drove to the middle school where I taught 7th grade social studies. My students were chatty as ever, throwing paper airplanes when they thought I wasn't looking, but I was numb inside. During my lunch break, I scrolled through photos of our family vacations from years ago: Disneyland when I was 10, Yellowstone at 14, the beach house in Cannon Beach for my 21st birthday. In every photo, I was the one holding the camera, smiling, but behind the lens, always behind. Even back then, Jenna was the star. My mom would fuss over her outfit, brush her hair, pose her just right. "Emily, move over," she'd say, without meaning to be cruel. "Let your sister have the light." But it wasn't just childhood favoritism. Looking back, it was a pattern, and I'd ignored it for far too long. When Dad passed away suddenly during my senior year of high school, everything shifted. He'd been our anchor, quiet, fair, and firm. Without him, the house felt hollow, and we all grieved differently. I buried myself in work and school. Jenna cried, then coasted. I got a job at a diner after school, helped pay for groceries, and still managed to graduate early. Jenna, she dropped out of her classes 3 times in college, said the pressure was too much, said the world was too hard on girls like her. Mom would defend her every time. "She's just more sensitive than you. She needs more care." But care turned into coddling. Coddling turned into entitlement. And by the time I was out of college and teaching full-time, Jenna had decided she didn't need to try anymore, because someone else would always catch her fall. That someone was me. I paid rent when Mom lost her part-time job. I paid for Jenna's emergency dental work, even though she never said thank you. I bought groceries, filled the fridge, and covered the electric bill without complaint. I thought that was what you did for family. But last night proved something else. To them, I wasn't family. I was funding. After school, I sat in my car and opened a new note on my phone. I started listing every bill I'd paid over the last year. Rent, $1,200 month, x to 12 equals $14,400. Utilities, average $150 month, x to 12 equals $1,800. Groceries, approx. $400 month, equals $4,800. Jenna's dental, $2,000. Other random expenses I couldn't even track anymore. That was over $23,000. And they wanted more? I could feel my pulse quickening. Not out of anger, but disbelief. How had I let this happen to myself? When I got back to Morgan's that evening, she had made a small pot of chili and was sitting cross-legged on the floor, grading high school essays. I sank into the couch beside her. "You okay?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "I don't know who I've been trying to please all this time, but it's never enough." Morgan looked up at me. "You've been trying to earn love from people who only loved what you gave." Her words sat heavy in the air. I thought of every birthday where I got a generic gift card while Jenna got spa packages and gold necklaces. I thought of the time I got COVID and quarantined in my room while my mom left me one meal a day and spent her afternoons watching Netflix with Jenna in the living room. I thought about how, when I got promoted to lead teacher last fall, neither of them said congratulations. They just asked if it came with a raise. It did, and I used it to fix the broken washing machine. I hadn't been living. I'd been surviving in a house that only saw me as a resource, and the scariest part? I let it happen. That night, I emailed my landlord and asked him to remove me from the apartment lease. I forwarded the email to my mom. I didn't add a note. I didn't need to. Then, I opened a new checking account, transferred half my savings, and locked it with a new password. I wouldn't let Jenna or my mom touch a single cent of my money again. Later, as I lay awake staring at Morgan's ceiling, I realized something. This was the beginning, not the end. I wasn't just walking away from a house. I was walking away from a history of being taken for granted, and I wasn't going back. The morning after I emailed the landlord, I woke up with a strange mix of dread and relief. On one hand, I was terrified that my mom would explode when she saw that email, terrified that Jenna would take to Instagram and make me the villain in some dramatic family betrayal post. But on the other hand, for the first time in years, I felt light, like a chain had slipped quietly off my ankle overnight. When I arrived home after work to collect the rest of my things, I knew the conversation wasn't going to be pretty. The apartment smelled faintly of takeout, Thai food, Jenna's favorite, which I knew she didn't pay for. She was sprawled on the couch in yoga pants, scrolling on her phone, her nails freshly done. My mom was in the kitchen stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce, humming like it was just another ordinary night. "Emily," she said without looking at me, "we need to talk." Here it comes, I thought. I dropped my bag near the door and crossed my arms. "I sent the email to the landlord. I'm taking my name off the lease." My mom's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. I'm done paying for this place. Done paying for everything." Jenna laughed, the kind of laugh that isn't amused. It's mocking. "You're seriously just going to run away? That's rich. Classic Emily." I clenched my jaw. "No, Jenna. Classic Emily was staying here year after year, taking care of everything while you sat around and contributed nothing. That version of me is gone." My mom slammed the wooden spoon against the pot, red sauce splattering onto the stove. "Don't you dare speak to your sister like that. She's finding her path. She needs time." "She's had time," I shot back. 5 years of time. What has she done with it besides drain me dry?" Jenna rolled her eyes, flicking her hair back. "Wow. Listen to her. Acting like she's some kind of saint because she works at a middle school. You think you're better than me, don't you?" I looked straight at her. "No, Jenna. I don't think I'm better. I just know I'm not weak enough to leech off the people who care about me." That was when the air shifted. My mom's face hardened, her lips thin and sharp. "If you don't want to help your family, then maybe you shouldn't be part of this family." There it was, the line I'd been waiting for, the confirmation of what I'd suspected all along. To her, love wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. The minute I stopped paying, I stopped belonging. I took a deep breath, turned on my heel, and walked to my room. I could hear Jenna muttering behind me, her voice dripping with false pity. "Poor Em. She'll come crawling back in a week." Maybe once, years ago, that would have been true. But not now. I pulled out my suitcase, tossing clothes inside without caring if they were folded. My laptop. A few books. The quilt my grandma made before she passed, the only thing in that room that held real meaning for me. Everything else, the desk, the old dresser, the decor, felt like it belonged to another life, another version of me, one I didn't need anymore. As I zipped the suitcase shut, my mom appeared in the doorway, arms crossed tight. Her eyes were cold. "You'll regret this," she said flatly. "Maybe," I answered. "But at least if I regret something, it'll be my mistake, not the result of living by your rules." She flinched, just slightly. I don't think she expected me to answer like that. I rolled my suitcase past her, past Jenna, who was now recording a video on her phone, probably to spin some story online about how I was abandoning them. I didn't care. Let the world believe what it wanted. The truth was clear, at least to me. When I stepped outside, the air felt sharper, colder, but cleansing. My car was parked across the street, and I loaded the suitcase into the trunk without looking back. That night, I went back to Morgan's. She'd left a blanket folded neatly on the couch and a sticky note on the table. "Proud of you. You're stronger than you think." I sank into the couch, pulled the blanket around my shoulders, and for the first time in a very long time, I cried. Not because I was weak, but because I was finally letting go. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes but a lighter chest. I made coffee in Morgan's tiny kitchen, sat at the wobbly dining table, and mapped out my finances on a yellow legal pad. For years, I'd been pouring my money into that apartment, into bills that weren't mine, into Jenna's whims and Mom's excuses. Without that drain, I realized, I could actually save. I could build something for myself. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, every paycheck was truly mine. That afternoon, while I was grading papers in the teacher's lounge, my phone buzzed. A string of texts from Mom lit up the screen. "You're embarrassing this family. Everyone will know how selfish you are. Don't bother coming back." I stared at the messages, my hand trembling. A week ago, those words would have gutted me. Now they felt hollow. She was trying to guilt me, trying to reel me back in with shame. But I wasn't hooked anymore. I put the phone down and whispered to myself, "You don't get to control me anymore." That evening, I logged onto my bank account and transferred every cent from my shared savings into the new account I'd opened. Then I called the credit card company and put a fraud alert on my file, just in case Jenna decided to get creative. By 10 p.m., I was exhausted, but steady. My entire life had been uprooted in the span of 48 hours, but I wasn't spiraling. I was planting something new. And yet, deep down, I knew this wasn't over. My mom and Jenna weren't the type to let go easily. They'd spin stories, play the victim, maybe even try to sabotage me. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because the day I walked out wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. The first week after I left, silence wrapped around me like a safety blanket. At Morgan's apartment, the nights were calm. No arguments from the living room, no passive-aggressive sighs from my mom, no sarcastic digs from Jenna, just the soft hum of traffic outside and the smell of coffee in the morning. For once, peace wasn't a luxury. It was real. But back at my mom's apartment, chaos had already begun. I didn't need to be there to know it. The signs were all over Jenna's social media. Her Instagram was the first giveaway. She was still posting like everything was fine. Boomerangs of wine glasses clinking, mirror selfies in new clothes, captions about living my best life. But I noticed little cracks. The background of her photos, once clean and curated, showed dishes piled high in the sink, wrinkled laundry on the couch, a stack of unopened envelopes on the counter. Unopened envelopes. I knew what those were. Bills. When I used to live there, I was the one who grabbed the mail, sorted the statements, and paid them online before late fees piled up. Without me, those envelopes just sat there, stacking higher every week. By the second week, the lights in the apartment windows were dark by 9 p.m. Neighbors talked. I got a text from Mrs. Ramirez, who lived down the hall, telling me the electric company had cut the power. "I don't know what's going on, sweetie," she wrote. "But your mom seemed embarrassed when I asked." I wasn't surprised. They had no backup plan. I'd been the plan all along. Still, it stung. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I realized how invisible my contributions had been. Years of keeping that household afloat, and now, without me, it was unraveling in a matter of weeks. One afternoon after school, I stopped at a cafe downtown to grade essays. A colleague slid into the seat across from me. "Emily, I heard your sister threw some party last weekend," she said. "Wasn't the power out at your place?" I blinked. "What?" She laughed, scrolling through her phone. "Look, Jenna posted it." And there it was. A photo of Jenna in a sequined dress, posing with friends, candles lit all around the apartment like it was some kind of bohemian lounge. The caption read, "Power outage? No problem. We still shine." I put my head in my hands. She wasn't just ignoring reality, she was glamorizing it, turning the mess I left behind into some curated spectacle for strangers to admire. But reality always catches up. By week 3, the texts from Mom started. Not apologies. Never that. Just complaints. "The landlord's been calling." "Why didn't you tell me the rent was this high?" "You need to come pick up your mail. The bank sent something again." "Jenna's stressed. You could at least help with groceries until we figure this out." I didn't reply, because the truth was, there was nothing to figure out. I'd been the one quietly carrying everything. Without me, the cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were canyons. Aunt Meredith was the one who gave me the real scoop. She called me one Sunday afternoon. "Emily, honey, I don't mean to stir things up, but your mom called me asking for money." My throat tightened. "How much?" $600. Said the rent was overdue. Said you abandoned them." I laughed bitterly. Of course she did. Aunt Meredith was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sweetheart, I've always known you were the one holding it all together. Don't let her guilt you into thinking otherwise." Her words hit me like sunlight through clouds. Someone finally saw it. Someone finally said it. Meanwhile, Jenna doubled down online. She posted a video of herself unboxing a designer purse, thanking her amazing family for supporting her. The comments were full of strangers praising her lifestyle, calling her lucky. But I knew the truth. That purse, bought with borrowed money. She was maxing out credit cards like Monopoly Cash, convinced she could keep up the act forever. The irony, her so-called amazing family wasn't me anymore. It was just my mom, who didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. By week 4, the calls turned desperate. One night, my phone buzzed at 11:30. It was Mom. I almost ignored it, but something in me wanted to hear her voice, just to know how far things had crumbled. I answered. Her voice was tight, almost frantic. "Emily, the water bill's overdue. They're threatening to shut it off. I can't believe you'd do this to your own family." I closed my eyes. "I didn't do anything to you. I just stopped doing everything for you." There was a long silence. Then she snapped. "Don't come crawling back when you realize you can't make it on your own." And she hung up. I stared at the screen, stunned. Not because she was cruel, but because she still believed she had power over me. The truth was, I wasn't crawling. I was standing taller than ever. Still, I couldn't ignore the strange mix of sadness and satisfaction building in my chest. Sadness, because my own mother would rather shame me than admit she'd leaned on me too much. Satisfaction, because for the first time, the consequences were finally hers to carry. The final straw came 2 days later. A coworker pulled me aside in the teacher's lounge. "Emily, your sister posted something weird on TikTok." I hesitated. "What kind of weird?" She lowered her voice. "She said you abandoned your family for money, that you're selfish. It's getting a lot of views." My stomach churned, but I forced a smile. "Thanks for telling me." That night, I found the video. Jenna, with perfectly curled hair and fake tears in her eyes, saying, "My sister chose money over blood. She left us with nothing. Pray for us." The comments were brutal, strangers calling me heartless, accusing me of neglect. But what none of them knew, what none of them saw, was the pile of unpaid bills sitting on their kitchen table, the empty fridge, the notices from the bank, the life falling apart behind that glossy screen. And deep down, I knew something important. I didn't need to defend myself, because sooner or later, the truth would outshine every lie Jenna tried to sell. And when it did, I wouldn't need to say a word. By the time a month had passed since I left, my life had taken on a rhythm that felt almost foreign, steady, quiet, mine. I'd settled into a shared apartment in Southeast Portland with 2 roommates, both kind women in their early 30s who worked in the nonprofit sector. The rent was modest, the kitchen had a coffee pot that never seemed empty, and the walls weren't filled with tension. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peace. Every morning, I walked to the bus stop with my lesson plans tucked under my arm, feeling lighter with each step. Without the weight of carrying an entire household on my back, my paycheck stretched further. I opened a high-yield savings account, something I'd never thought possible before, and began stashing away a little each month. For the first time, my money was building my life, not patching holes in someone else's. But freedom came with a new kind of ache. Sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through Jenna's latest posts. She was still keeping up appearances, posing at brunches she didn't pay for, showing off shopping bags I knew were bought with credit. And in the captions, she continued the story. Still thriving, family over everything. The hypocrisy burned, but I bit my tongue. I'd promised myself not to get dragged back into their circus. Instead, I poured my energy into work. I picked up tutoring sessions after school, helping 8th graders prep for state exams. On weekends, I began freelance curriculum writing for an online education company. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well enough that my bank account grew steadily. Every dollar was a small rebellion, proof that I could thrive without them. One Saturday, as I sipped coffee at a cafe near Powell's Books, I got a call from Aunt Meredith. "I've been thinking," she said warmly. "Why don't you come stay with me for a weekend? I've got the guest room. It might be nice to have some quiet outside the city." Meredith lived in Bend, near the mountains. She'd always been the black sheep of the family, the aunt who spoke her mind, who refused to play along with my mom's guilt trips. I drove down that Friday and spent 2 nights in her cozy cabin-style home. Over tea one evening, she looked at me seriously. "You know, Emily, your mother trained you to believe it was your job to carry everything, but that was never your burden. You're allowed to live your life without apology." Her words sank into me like water into dry earth. No one had ever said that to me so directly before. Back in Portland, I carried her words like a shield. I started therapy at a community clinic, peeling back years of guilt and resentment. For once, I was facing the truth about my family dynamic. It wasn't love that bound us together, it was control. And that control was slipping away from them. But just when I thought I was safe, Jenna tried a new tactic, one I hadn't seen coming. It started with a strange email from my bank. "Suspicious activity detected. Please verify your account access." My heart raced as I clicked the link. Someone had tried to log in from a new device. Then I saw it. 3 failed attempts to answer my security questions. I knew instantly who it was. Jenna. No one else knew my childhood pet's name, or the street I grew up on. She'd been fishing for my information since we were kids, snooping through my journals, copying my passwords, and now she'd taken it further. I called the bank immediately, confirmed my identity, and added a fraud alert to my account. They assured me nothing had gone through, but the pit in my stomach didn't go away. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. She wasn't content to guilt me. She wasn't content to shame me online. She wanted my money, even if it meant breaking the law to get it. The next morning, I confided in Morgan over breakfast. She listened quietly, then said, "Emily, you need to protect yourself. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is theft." She was right. I went to the police station that afternoon and filed a report. It felt surreal saying Jenna's name out loud in that sterile office, describing how my own sister had tried to break into my account. But the officer nodded sympathetically, jotting down notes. "We'll investigate," he said. "If she attempts this again, we'll have a record on file." I left with a copy of the report tucked into my bag, a strange mix of relief and sadness pressing on my chest. Never in my life did I think I'd have to protect myself legally from my own sister. But here I was. Later that week, Aunt Meredith called again. "Emily, your mom asked me for money again. She said Jenna's stressed and needs a break. I told her no." I sighed. "Thank you." "She's not used to hearing no," Meredith said. "But Emily, you don't owe them your silence. At some point, you may need to tell the family the truth." Her words echoed in my mind long after we hung up. The truth. For years, I'd been quiet. Paid the bills, carried the weight, said nothing. And in my silence, they'd rewritten the story. To them, I was selfish. To outsiders, I was the daughter who abandoned her family. Meanwhile, Jenna played the victim, my mom the martyr. But the bank alert had changed something in me. This wasn't just about image anymore. It was about survival. That weekend, I pulled out a folder and began gathering proof. Bank statements, receipts, leases, screenshots of payments. Every detail of the last 3 years laid bare. I didn't know when I'd use it, but I knew one thing. When the moment came, I'd be ready. Because they thought I'd walked away quietly. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was preparing for theirs to crumble. If this story touches you, drop a number 1 in the comments. Every one reminds us that these stories matter, and it gives us the motivation to keep sharing them with you. By the time spring arrived in Portland, my life looked nothing like it had just 3 months earlier. My bank account had grown, my stress levels had dropped, and my mornings began with quiet coffee instead of shouting matches. But as much as I tried to focus on the positives, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jenna and my mom were still plotting in the background. And I was right. It started with another attempted login on my bank account. This time, the bank froze access completely until I verified in person. When I sat down with a representative, they showed me security footage of someone trying to use a fake ID with my name on it. The hair was bleached, the makeup heavy, but I knew those eyes, Jenna. I felt my stomach twist. She'd gone beyond guessing passwords. She had actually tried to impersonate me. The representative frowned. "We'll have to file this with our fraud department, and you should contact law enforcement immediately." I nodded numbly. "I already filed a report. She's my sister." His eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. That evening, I added the footage to my growing folder of evidence, bank statements, lease agreements, screenshots of Jenna's posts bragging about a lifestyle I knew she couldn't afford. And now, video proof of attempted identity theft. It felt like my life had turned into a courtroom drama. Except I wasn't waiting for justice. I was building it. A week later, Aunt Meredith called. "Emily, there's a family dinner on Sunday. Your mom says you should come." I hesitated. Sounds like a trap. Maybe, but maybe it's your chance to speak up, to finally tell the truth. Her words lingered. For so long, I'd avoided confrontation, choosing silence over scandal. But silence hadn't protected me. It had enabled them. So I said yes. That Sunday, I drove across town to my cousin's house, where the family had gathered. My mom was already there, perched on the couch with Jenna beside her. They looked polished, rehearsed, like they'd planned every word of what they were about to say. I sat at the far end of the room, my folder tucked in my bag. It didn't take long. My mom leaned forward, her voice dripping with false concern. "Emily, you've caused a lot of hurt. Jenna's been struggling since you left. We all know you walked away from your responsibilities." Jenna sniffled on cue, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "She doesn't care about family. She left us with nothing." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some relatives frowned at me. Others looked down uncomfortably. For a moment, I felt that old familiar guilt rise in my chest. But then I remembered the bank footage, the envelopes of unpaid bills, the years of sacrifice. And I stood. "Enough," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. The room fell silent. "You want to talk about responsibility? Let's talk about the rent I paid, the groceries I bought, the bills I covered every single month while Jenna lived like a queen." Gasps echoed around me. My mom's face flushed crimson. I pulled out the folder, flipping it open. Here, mortgage statements with my name, utility bills from my account, grocery receipts in my handwriting. For 3 years, I carried this household alone. And what did I get in return? Demands for more. I could see the relatives leaning forward, eyes scanning the documents I held up. And when I finally said no, my voice cracked, but I pressed on. My own family tried to erase me. My own sister tried to steal from me, twice. I pulled out a printout of the fraud alert, then the still image from the bank's footage. This is Jenna, trying to use my name, my identity, my life. The room exploded. Aunts gasped. Uncles whispered. Cousins exchanged shocked looks. Jenna's face drained of color. "That's not— Don't lie," I snapped. "The bank gave me this footage. The police have a report. Do you really want to keep pretending?" For once, she had no comeback. My mom tried to jump in, her voice shrill. "She's just young." She made a mistake. I turned to her, calm but firm. "No. She made a choice. And so did you, Mom. You chose to protect her lies over my truth. You chose to cut me out the second I stopped paying. That's not love. That's exploitation." Silence fell heavy across the room. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but I didn't back down. For the first time in my life, I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't shrinking. I was standing tall, telling the truth. It was Aunt Meredith who broke the silence. She stood up, walked over, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Emily's been carrying this family for years," she said firmly, "and you both treated her like she was disposable. Enough is enough." The words rippled like an earthquake. Other relatives began nodding, some even speaking up. "She's right," an uncle said. "We've all heard your stories, but now we see the proof." "I always wondered how Jenna could afford all that," another cousin muttered. Jenna shrank back into the couch, her mascara smudging as her tears turned real. My mom stared at the floor, her mask slipping for the first time. And me? For the first time in years, I felt weight lift off my shoulders. Not because the battle was over, it wasn't, but because the truth was finally in the open. That night, when I got home, my phone buzzed with a call from the Portland Police Department. "We've reviewed the footage and the report," the officer said. "We're moving forward with charges." I hung up, my hands trembling. Jenna thought she could steal my identity, rewrite my story, and get away with it. But now, the truth was bigger than her lies, and justice was finally catching up. The week after the family dinner was a blur of emotions. Relief, fear, anger, hope, they all tangled together inside me. I had finally spoken my truth out loud. The lies that had weighed me down for years were now exposed in front of the very people who once looked at me like I was selfish. But telling the truth was only the first step. The real consequences were still coming. On Tuesday, I received a call from Detective Harris, the officer assigned to Jenna's case. His tone was calm but direct. "Emily, we've gathered enough evidence to move forward. We'll be issuing a summons for your sister to appear in court. You may be asked to testify." My hands trembled on the phone. "So it's really happening?" "Yes," he said. "Identity theft is a serious charge, but your cooperation has made this case strong. If you're ready, we'll guide you through every step." When I hung up, I just sat there at my kitchen table in Portland, staring at my coffee as it grew cold. For so long, I had felt powerless, trapped in a cycle of guilt and manipulation. Now, the law itself was stepping in. It was terrifying, but it was also liberating. That night, Aunt Meredith called to check on me. "Emily," she said gently, "don't let them scare you. You did the right thing." Her voice steadied me. I wasn't alone anymore. 2 weeks later, the court date arrived. I walked into the Multnomah County Courthouse, my heart hammering in my chest. The building loomed above me, gray and cold, but inside, there was a strange sense of order, like the chaos of my life was finally being filtered into something that made sense. Jenna was already there, sitting with her lawyer. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, her shoulders hunched, her makeup barely covering the exhaustion on her face. My mom sat beside her, clutching her hand like she was the victim. When they saw me walk in, Jenna glared, her eyes filled with the same resentment I had seen at our kitchen table months before. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, her face pale. The judge entered and everyone stood. The proceedings began with the prosecution laying out the case, the bank footage, the failed ID attempt, the forged loan application, the screenshots of Jenna's spending sprees alongside her claims that I was funding her. Piece by piece, the picture became clear, not just to me, but to everyone in that room. I was called to the stand. My palms sweated as I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. "Emily," the prosecutor began, "can you explain, in your own words, what your role in the household was for the last few years?" I swallowed hard, then spoke. "I paid everything, the rent, the bills, the groceries. My mom and sister didn't contribute. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping the family afloat. But the moment I said no, they turned against me." "And did your sister Jenna ever repay you or contribute financially?" "No," I said firmly. "She didn't. Instead, she tried to take more, first by demanding half my salary, then by attempting to steal my identity." As I spoke, I glanced at the jury. Some nodded, others scribbled notes. For the first time, I felt seen. Then came Jenna's turn. She stood shakily, her lawyer guiding her. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said, her voice trembling. "I was desperate. I thought Emily owed me. She's always had more money, more opportunities. I just wanted my share." Her words hit me like a familiar echo. I'd heard them so many times before, spoken in anger, whispered in guilt trips, screamed in late-night fights. But now, under oath, they sounded hollow. The judge's expression was unreadable. "Ms. Carter," he said to Jenna, "jealousy is not justification for fraud. Responsibility cannot be stolen." By the end of the day, the decision was clear. Jenna was found guilty of attempted identity theft and fraud. Her sentence: probation, mandatory financial counseling, and community service. She would also carry a criminal record, something that would follow her far longer than any social media post or flashy purchase. When the gavel struck, I felt my chest loosen, like a knot I had carried for years was finally untangling. Outside the courthouse, reporters lingered, sensing drama. I ignored them. I wasn't there to create a spectacle. I was there to reclaim my life. But as I walked down the courthouse steps, I heard a familiar voice. "Emily?" I turned. Mom stood there, her eyes brimming with tears. "Please," she said, reaching out. "She's still your sister. Don't let this break the family apart." I looked at her hand, then at her face, the same face that had once demanded I give away half my salary without a second thought. "I didn't break this family," I said quietly. "You did, the day you chose greed over love." Her hand fell to her side. She said nothing as I walked away. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the Portland skyline glow against the river. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about bills or guilt or responsibility. I was thinking about possibility. Justice hadn't erased the pain. It hadn't erased the years of being used. But it had given me something far more valuable: closure. And as I sipped my tea, I realized something important. The story wasn't ending here. This was just the beginning of a life where I set the terms, where I decided who had access to me, and where my worth was no longer tied to what I could provide. For the first time, I was free to imagine a future built for me, not for those who tried to take everything from me. After the court case, life in Portland settled into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. For the first time, my days belonged to me. I wasn't waking up to new demands, guilt trips, or emergencies that weren't mine to fix. Instead, I woke up to sunlight pouring through my apartment windows, brewed coffee in peace, and planned a future that was mine alone. But the echoes of my past didn't disappear overnight. The first weeks after the verdict, Jenna flooded social media with vague posts about haters and family betrayal. She tried to paint herself as the misunderstood artist crushed by a greedy sister. But this time, people weren't buying it. Her so-called friends stopped showing up. The same ones who once cheered her shopping sprees and wild nights quietly unfollowed her. When the gossip spread that she had a criminal record, doors closed fast. The local studio she bragged about working with dropped her name immediately. Even the small bar where she sometimes performed refused to book her again. As for Mom, her silence was louder than any accusation. She stopped calling, stopped defending Jenna online, stopped pretending everything was fine. Relatives who had once swallowed her stories now avoided her. At family gatherings, she sat alone in the corner, her pride deflated, her influence gone. Aunt Meredith kept me updated, but gently. "They're living with their choices," she said one Sunday afternoon over coffee at a cafe near the Willamette River. "And you're living with your freedom." I smiled, letting her words sink in. She was right. But my story wasn't about their downfall anymore. It was about my rise. With the money I no longer poured into that crumbling house, I built a life of my own. I took weekend trips to Cannon Beach, standing barefoot in the sand and breathing in the ocean air. I signed up for a pottery class in downtown Portland, discovering the joy of shaping something with my own two hands. I joined a book club where no one knew my family history. They just knew me as Emily, the woman who loved novels and brought the best brownies to meetings. My career flourished, too. I applied for a leadership program at work, and for the first time, I walked into the interview without the weight of family chaos pulling me down. I talked about my vision, my ideas, my discipline, and I was promoted within 3 months. When I told Aunt Meredith, she hugged me tight. "This is who you were always meant to be," she said. Still, I knew there was one final thread I had to cut. One evening, as the rain tapped softly against my apartment windows, I sat with my phone in hand. My mother's number was still saved there, a silent reminder of the woman who had demanded half my salary, who had defended Jenna's lies until the very end. I hesitated, then opened my settings and blocked the number, the same with Jenna's. And just like that, the last chain snapped. I thought I would feel guilty, but instead, I felt light. In the months that followed, I barely thought about them. Their absence wasn't a wound anymore. It was space. Space. I filled with laughter, new friendships, quiet evenings, and dreams I had put off for too long. But the world has a way of circling back. Almost a year after I left that house, I attended another family gathering at Aunt Meredith's insistence. This time, it wasn't about confrontation. It was about connection with the people who had stood by me. When I walked in, relatives greeted me with warmth, some even apologizing for believing Mom's stories. My younger cousins hugged me, telling me how proud they were of my strength. For the first time, I felt celebrated, not used. Jenna wasn't there. Neither was Mom. And honestly, I didn't miss them. At the end of the evening, as I helped Aunt Meredith wash dishes, she looked at me and said, "You know, Emily, sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who believes in you, who chooses you." Her words sank deep, because she was right. For so long, I thought I owed my mother and sister everything. That being family meant giving until I had nothing left. But the truth was simple. Family without respect isn't family at all. That night, driving home across the Hawthorne Bridge, the city lights shimmering on the river, I realized I had rewritten my story. I wasn't the wallet. I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't disposable. I was Emily, a woman who had chosen herself, who had survived betrayal, and who had built a life stronger than the lies meant to break her. And while their world crumbled, mine was just beginning. As I parked outside my apartment, I whispered to myself the promise I had made the night I walked out with nothing but a suitcase. They'll never use me again. And this time, I knew it wasn't just a vow. It was my truth. Because justice had been served, peace was mine, and my future was finally my own.